Hand over your penthouse to Carlos. My parents cornered me at my brother's wedding. When I refused, Dad slapped me in front of 200 guests. I smiled and whispered, "You just lost me." Hand over your penthouse to Carlos. My father's demand cut through the wedding reception noise. When I refused, his palm cracked against my cheek, the sound echoing across the ballroom. 200 guests froze mid-conversation, champagne glasses suspended in mid-air. My brother's perfect wedding day now featured his sister with a red handprint on her face. "How dare you embarrass us like this?" My mother whispered, her eyes burning with rage rather than concern. The betrayal was brutal. But what came after changed everything. I touched my burning cheek and smiled slightly. In that moment, they had no idea they just lost me forever. I'm Elena Brooks, 31. A software architect who built my career from scratch after putting myself through college with 3 jobs and 0 family support. 5 years ago, I bought my dream penthouse in downtown, the first real symbol that I had made it, despite everyone betting against me. The same penthouse my family suddenly decided belonged to my brother Carlos. While I built my life brick by brick, my younger brother Carlos remained the golden child who never had to struggle. Our parents funded his education, his failed business ventures, now his extravagant wedding at the Grand Plaza Hotel with crystal chandeliers and champagne fountains. If you've ever been underestimated or betrayed by family, subscribe right now and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your story deserves to be heard, and trust me when I say that knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. What happened at that wedding reception would finally force me to see my family for who they truly were and show them exactly who I had become. The wedding had been picture perfect until that moment. Carlos looked handsome in his tailored tuxedo. His bride Vanessa floated down the aisle in a dress that cost more than my first car. I sat in the second row wearing a dress I'd splurged on to show my support. I even gave a heartfelt toast, despite being relegated to family speaker rather than maid of honor. During the cocktail hour, I was admiring a towering ice sculpture when my parents cornered me behind a large floral arrangement. The sweet scent of lilies suddenly felt suffocating. "We need to discuss something important," my mother said, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes cold as winter. She gripped her crystal champagne flute so tightly, I thought it might shatter. My father straightened his bow tie before dropping the bomb. "Carlos and Vanessa need somewhere to live after the honeymoon. That penthouse of yours is far too big for just one person," he stated, as if it were already decided. "They're starting a family. You're just working all the time." I laughed, thinking it was some bizarre joke. "Very funny, Dad." That's when my mother grabbed my wrist, her manicured nails digging into my skin. "We've already promised them, don't be selfish. Elena family comes first." The grip tightened when I pulled away, leaving crescent moon marks on my arm. "That penthouse is mine. I worked for it, I paid for it. I'm not giving it away because Carlos can't afford his own place," I said, my voice rising. Despite my attempt to stay calm, the string quartet's melody seemed to fade as blood rushed to my ears. My father's face darkened, his cheeks flushing the same shade as the wine in his glass. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us." "Done for me?" I laughed bitterly. "I worked 3 jobs to put myself through college while you paid Carlos full tuition. I lived in a studio apartment with black mold while you bought him a car. What exactly have you done for me?" He followed me back to the reception. His footsteps heavy behind me, could feel his anger radiating like heat from an open flame. Guests smiled nervously as we passed, sensing the tension crackling between us. It happened during the father of the groom speech. My father stood champagne in hand, his voice booming across the venue as he praised his perfect son. Then his gaze locked on me. "And while most of our family understands sacrifice and putting others first, some of us," he pointed directly at me, his finger trembling with rage, couldn't take it anymore. I stood to leave, chair scraping loudly against the marble floor. That's when he reached out and his hand connected with my face. The crack silenced the entire venue, even the music stopped in the ringing. Silence that followed, I heard a glass shatter and someone gasp. My cheek burned as if branded, the taste of blood filled my mouth where my teeth had cut the inside of my cheek. "Elena!" someone called out, but I was already walking away, my heels clicking against the floor in perfect rhythm with my pounding heart. I spent that night in my penthouse staring at the city lights through floor-to-ceiling windows. Ice pack pressed against my face. My phone buzzed constantly with messages from shocked guests and a few fake apologies from relatives, not one from my parents or Carlos. The doorbell rang at 9 a.m. the next morning. I opened it to find Carlos and Vanessa standing there as if nothing had happened. Vanessa wore white jeans and carried a measuring tape. Carlos held a coffee, not even offering me one. "We just came to measure for our furniture," Vanessa said, trying to push past me into my home. Her perfume was overwhelming, sugary, sweet, and giving me an instant headache. I blocked the doorway with my arm. "Excuse me?" Carlos sipped his coffee and rolled his eyes. "Don't be difficult. Elena, Mom and Dad already told everyone you're giving us your place as a wedding gift. We need to get measurements before we leave for our honeymoon tomorrow. The audacity stole my breath. You think after Dad slapped me in front of everyone, I'm just going to hand over my home? Vanessa had the nerve to look annoyed. It was just a little family disagreement. Don't be so dramatic. I slammed the door in their faces, my hands shaking so badly, I could barely turn the lock through the door. I heard Carlos shout, "This isn't over, Elena. You can't be selfish forever." 3 days later, my Aunt Meredith called. Her voice crackled through the speaker sharp as broken glass. "How could you be so heartless? Your brother needs a home for his new family." I pressed my fingers against my temple. "Aunt Meredith, that's not. Your parents have done everything for you, and this is how you repay them, by hoarding your wealth, while your poor brother suffers." The family gossip machine had been working overtime before I could respond. My phone pinged with a text from my cousin. "You always thought you were better than everyone else." By the end of the week, my inbox was flooded with messages from family members I hadn't spoken to in years, all suddenly concerned about my brother's housing situation. Not one person asked about the red mark that had bloomed on my face like a cruel flower. Then came the group chat. My mother created it and named it Elaine as Penthouse Handover. 12 family members added the first message, a photo of paint swatches. For the master bedroom, the second links to moving companies. Third moving date set for 2 weeks from Saturday. My fingers hovered over the keyboard before I typed. This is not happening. Within minutes, my phone rang. My father's name flashed on the screen. I answered and immediately held the phone away from my ear. "You ungrateful brat. We raised you better than this." His voice was so loud. The speaker crackled. "After everything we've sacrificed." "What sacrifice? Dad? Name one thing you've done for me in the last decade." The silence that followed was brief, but telling. "You owe us this," he finally said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Family helps family. Unless that family member is me." Apparently, with each confrontation, something hardened inside me. The hurt was still there, a constant ache beneath my ribs. Something else was growing stronger, my resolve. I started recording phone calls, saving texts, taking screenshots of the group chat. The daughter they knew would have eventually given in, worn down by guilt and pressure that daughter was gone. Sunday dinner at my parents' house was mandatory in our family. I went armed with new strength, curious to see how far they would push. Tension was thick enough to cut with the butter knives we used on my mother's dinner rolls. Halfway through the meal, my father slammed his fist on the table, making the china jump. "Enough games. Elena, Carlos gets your keys next weekend or you're no longer part of this family." My mother nodded in agreement while Carlos smirked behind his wine glass. "It's what's best for everyone," she added, as if we were discussing weekend plans and not the theft of my home. I simply stood up, placed my napkin on the table, and walked out without a word. The door closed behind me with a soft click that felt more final than any slam could have. What my family didn't know was that the struggling daughter they dismissed had been quietly building an empire while they weren't paying attention. The software company where I started as a junior developer, I now owned controlling shares. The startup I joined on weekends, recently valued at 8 figures after our latest funding round. During the wedding preparations, when I'd stepped away for work calls, I was actually finalizing details with my legal team about a major acquisition that would change everything. Penthouse they coveted, just a small piece of what I built. If they only knew who actually owned the building Carlos worked in, I whispered to myself. One night, staring at the city lights that sparkled like the future I created for myself. The glass felt cool against my forehead as I pressed it against the window, grounding myself in the reality of what I needed to do next. I'd kept my success quiet, partly from modesty, partly because something always told me to. Keep my cards close. That instinct was about to pay off in ways my family couldn't imagine. The day after the slap, I made one call to my financial advisor. "It's time to execute Plan B, all of it." His surprise, "Are you sure?" was met with my calm. "Never been more certain of anything?" My college roommate Jasmine had always been the one person who believed in me. Now, a high-powered attorney with her own firm, she sat in my living room reviewing security footage from my building, showing my family's unannounced visits and attempted entries. "This is harassment. Elena," she said, pushing her glasses up her nose as she made notes. "We have everything we need for a restraining order. If it comes to that." "I hope it doesn't," I said, though I was beginning to doubt it. Meanwhile, my parents escalated their campaign. A certified letter arrived, the formal language almost comical. "This document serves as official notice to honor our family's verbal agreement regarding the property transfer." It claimed they had invested significantly in my future and deserved returns on that investment. Jasmine laughed when I showed her. "They've got nothing, but they're certainly committed to this delusion." My business partner Marcus had witnessed the slap at the wedding over lunch at a quiet cafe where the smell of fresh bread made everything seemed deceptively normal. He connected me with his cousin who worked at the same company as Carlos. "You need to know what they're planning," he said, sliding a folder across the table. Inside was evidence that shocked even me. Carlos had already updated his address with HR. He told colleagues about his amazing new penthouse and invited them for a housewarming party next month. There's more, Marcus said, his expression grim. Your brother's been taking long lunches with the CEO. Word is he's leveraging family connections for a promotion. The family connections he meant were mine, though. Carlos had no idea. I own 30% of the company's shares through a holding company. The espresso turned bitter in my mouth as I processed this information. They really believe they're going to take my home. They've already hired movers for Saturday. Marcus confirmed your brother and his wife. Are that confident you'll cave under pressure? They'd even listed my address for wedding gift deliveries. 3 packages had arrived just that morning, monogrammed towels, a crystal vase, and an espresso machine for the happy couple's new home. The final straw came Wednesday night. My father tested everyone in the family meeting at Alanis Penthouse Friday, 7 p.m. She will do the right thing and sign the transfer papers. Keys will be exchanged. This matter is closed. The audacity was breathtaking. For the first time since this began, I felt completely calm. The board was set. All the pieces were in place. Game on. I whispered to my reflection as I applied concealer to the last fading yellow traces of my father's handprint. Friday night arrived with a summer storm, rain lashing against my windows as if nature itself was setting the scene. At exactly 7 p.m., my doorbell rang. I took a deep breath, smoothed down my crisp white blouse, and opened the door. My entire family stood there, parents, Carlos and Vanessa, aunts, uncles, even cousins I rarely saw outside of holidays. My father carried a manila envelope that I assumed contained transfer documents. My mother clutched paint swatches and fabric samples. Carlos wore a smug smile that I itched to wipe off his face. Come in, I said, pleasantly stepping aside as they filed in, shaking off umbrellas, and exclaiming over the view, the furnishings, the space they already saw as theirs. Before we start, I have some guests joining us, I said, calmly opening the door wider to reveal Jasmine, Marcus, and 2 other professionals in business attire waiting in the hallway. My attorney, business partner, financial advisor, and the building's head of security. My father scoffed, raindrops still clinging to his silver hair, can bring an army of fancy friends. You're still signing these papers. He patted the envelope. My mother added, stop making a scene, Elena. This is family business. Let me clear something up, I said, motioning to my team to distribute blue folders to everyone. The sound of papers rustling filled the room as family members opened them, confusion increasing their brows. This isn't just my penthouse. I own the entire building. My aunt gasped. Carlos. His mouth fell open. My father's face turned an alarming shade of red. That's impossible, he spluttered. You're just a software developer. As they flipped through documents showing my real estate holdings, I continued. I also own majority shares in Westview Development Group. Carlos is employer. My brother's face drained of color, his earlier confidence evaporating like morning dew. This, I said, as Jasmine connected her phone to my sound system and played an audio recording of my father's threats. And my mother's manipulations is what the family court judge will hear when reviewing the restraining order my attorney. He filed this morning. The family that had been so loud moments before fell completely silent. The only sound was the rain against the windows and my father's heavy breathing. You're bluffing, he finally said, but his voice wavered. Those joint accounts you've been draining, Dad. They're monitored. Those loans you never repaid. I have the paperwork, the mortgage on your house that mysteriously got paid off last year. That was me trying to help quietly, because that's what family does. My mother's hand flew to her pearl necklace. You paid off our mortgage. I did. And Carlos's student loans and the startup capital for his first failed business, and the down payment for his and Vanessa's first apartment that they saved for themselves. Carlos lunged forward, his face contorted with rage. You think you're so much better than us. You've been playing us this whole time. My security chief stepped between us, his presence calm but unmistakably firm. Sir, please don't make this worse for yourself. I looked at my stunned family and said quietly, I'm not giving you my home. I'm not giving you anything ever again. And if any of you contact me after tonight, these documents go public. Carlos, your company will know exactly how you got your position. Mom, Dad, your friends will learn how you treat your daughter. You can't do this to us. My mother whispered, we're family. You stopped being my family. The moment you decided I was nothing but a resource to be drained. I walked to the door and held it open. This meeting is over. One by one they filed out. My father's shoulders slumped in defeat, my mother's mascara running down her cheeks. Carlos wouldn't even look at me. Aunts and uncles and cousins murmured awkward goodbyes, suddenly remembering they had somewhere else to be. Vanessa paused at the door, the last to leave. I didn't know she whispered, her eyes meeting mine for the first time with something like respect. About any of this. I'm sorry, It was the only genuine thing I'd heard from any of them. After they left, Jasmine squeezed my hand. I nodded, surprised to find it was true. I really am. The next morning, I stood at my floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city wake up. Sunlight glittered off glass buildings, turning puddles from last night's storm into mirrors reflecting a clear blue sky. For the first time in years, my shoulders felt lighter. No more secret phone calls helping. With bills, they forgot to pay. No more biting my tongue when they dismissed my achievements. That afternoon, I signed papers donating a significant amount to a scholarship fund for students without family support. Kids like I had been the foundation asked to use my name. I finally said, sometimes the family you're born into isn't the family you're meant to keep. I told my support group the following week. I lost the people who should have loved me unconditionally, but I found my worth isn't determined by their approval. The red handprint had faded from my cheek, but the memory remained mine, not as a scar, but as the moment I finally set myself free. Sometimes it takes a slap to wake you up to reality. My reality was that I had outgrown the box. My family tried to keep me in. If you've ever had to prove your worth to those who doubted you, hit subscribe and share your story in the comments. You are not alone in this journey of finding your voice. Family betrayal cuts deeper than any other kind, but your value isn't determined by those who fail to see it. Building boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary. Next week, I'll share how I rebuilt my support system with people who celebrate rather than diminish my successes. Remember, sometimes losing toxic people is the first step to finding yourself. Your story matters. Let's build this community together.